Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another deep dive episode of Severance by Story Archives. I am your host, or one half of your severed hosts, alongside
the other half of the severed host. I guess I'm the outie, whatever. Zachary, welcome back.
Welcome back. We are back with Season 2, Episode 7, titled Chikhai Bardo, which I've been doing some Redditing. I've been doing some researching. Very briefly, I've become a PhD master in Buddhist terms. And I have found out the secret meaning of Chikhai Bardo, which I don't know what it means for our beloved characters, our beloved Mark Scout, our beloved Gemma, who's becoming increasingly beloved after this episode for sure. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to keep listening to find out what Chikhai Bardo means, because I'm going to be dropping that in a few minutes. So keep staying tuned for that.
You know what you should do in the meantime, though?
What up?
Hit that subscribe button.
Oh, yes. Yes. Please hit the subscribe button and tune into all the other stuff we got going on the channel. I just dropped part 1 of 2 of our Court of Gold Netflix series, which is documenting Team USA basketball's gold-winning journey through the Olympics last year. You can do that. I did a crossover pod with my friend Victor Lopez, who's the host of the All Things Basketball podcast, and who I've been secretly trying to negotiate to buy his show for a long time. He keeps on saying no to my offers, but I've offered, undisclosed amounts of money to license his show for the network. But
love it.
So far, he's been hard to bring to the negotiation table. This is probably the best episode of TV I've watched, maybe ever.
I was thinking the same thing. At the very least, this tops anything I've seen this year. This episode was solid all around. I don't think there was a single thing I didn't like about it, and that's odd coming from me.
That's a lot for you.
Yeah, I know, right?
I would have to agree. Maybe this is a prisoner of the moment type of situation here, but I'm having a very difficult time remembering a better made episode of almost anything. And it's the whole thing is just a marvel across the board, right? Just story wise, cinematography wise, acting, the writing, everything is spectacular. It's just never a moment lost in Severance. And I gotta say, I've been raving about it all season, but they really don't miss a moment. Where other shows would just say, insert montage, they just decide to make the most beautiful piece of art for 30 seconds or 2 minutes. Even that French song montage of the love story of Gemma and Mark in the middle of this episode is just so well made.
Oh yeah.
That one shot of going into the computer and going up the wires, which
that was solid. I loved that.
Who did that IT installation of all those wires? Very well organized wires in there. We finally get the cameo of who that white guy was in episode 1. Remember, I pointed it out in episode 1. I said, there was a guy back there who we've never seen before who was following Mark. And it was that guy who was surveilling Mark's work, which, interesting enough, you got 4 of them. All 4 are kind of bad lookalikes of each of our main MDR characters, right?
Pretty close, yeah.
You got Mark, Helly, Dylan, Irv. All of them just look like distantly related versions of the other. In fact, the Dylan one looked just like the Door Factory guy, which made me wonder maybe it is the Door Factory guy. And just how much does Keir control this town, that maybe this is just the whole town maybe exists for this experiment to continue and to finish. I don't know. But we also found out that this town apparently had grass at one point, and it wasn't always snowing because in the flashbacks it's all green grass. It's
warm,
not winter, unless we are still in winter, which means that Gemma didn't die too long ago. Maybe she died a couple of months ago in Severance time.
Well, yeah, anything's possible. I feel like we've just been in the world for so long, but maybe not all that much time has really truly passed. I did love to finally see a warm version of I guess atmosphere. So that's nice.
Yeah.
You know, dude, like you're right though. The montage, I love the montages. That was like the film look on it, the green going, like, man, it was just so good. I could just watch those on their own. You don't even need the sound on.
And I want to rewatch this episode, and I really can't say that about any other episode in the season, and that's not a knock on the season, but I almost want to rewatch it and dissect it further. This feels almost like back in the day when we would do the double watch. Like, we used to watch the episodes twice, sometimes more than twice, you know, time permitting for some of the deep dives. But there was something I noticed also in the flashbacks, and you could probably scan from left to right now and kind of prove me right or wrong. Like, literally go all the way back and just kind of scroll through the episode and just pay attention to the flashback scenes. You'll notice they go from bright and sunny.
Yeah.
Bright and sunny, bright and sunny and warm, till as the episode progresses and Gemma loses the baby and she's having marital troubles with Mark, that it gets grainier and fuzzier and bluer and darker and more shadowy. And then we get to our iconic sort of town of Kier look at the end when Mark is greeting the two cops at the door, where it's just pure shadows, darkness, and the light in front of him, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the light is being sucked out of his life throughout this whole episode. And we're seeing it in the montages, and we're seeing it subtly in every image of Gemma as it goes on. Like when she's sitting at the kitchen table and he's getting frustrated with how frustrated she is, right? Mm-hmm. And he's saying, you know, if you're frustrated, we can just quit, right? Yeah. We don't have to keep trying to have a baby. And if you look at her face there, I don't know if my eyes are imagining it, but she was more ingrained than he was. And so it was almost like we were watching a recording of his memories, which we were, right?
Yeah.
But it brought to mind when that thing I said about the light being sucked from his life, what I found out Chikhai Bardo means, right? Which I found on Reddit, and it is supposedly there are 6 Bardos in Buddhist.
You went deep.
I guess.
Okay, all right, bring it on.
Slightly deep. Buddhists in the crowd, please correct me, but there are 6 Bardos. And these are the 6 phases of life and death, right? The first 3 are life, and then the 4th is the moment right after death, where you decide whether you're going to die or if you're going to escape the endless cycle of rebirth. And so, in other words, it's almost like we're seeing both of their moments of post-death. That's kind of my immediate reaction to it. You know, we're seeing Mark, who just slammed his head across his tile floor last episode, and so he is on the verge of death, probably, maybe. And then you see Miss Casey, aka Gemma, sort of in her decided phase, where she's already decided that she's going to live because she wants to get back to Mark, right? That's kind of like the continued plight of hers in this episode of how is she going to get back to Mark. So the question is, are they both going to be able to rebirth into their forms of selves that, you know, recognize each other and be able to escape the grip of this freaking devious organization of Lumen?
Man, I sure hope so. I feel like Mark is woken up, reintegrated at the very end of this episode. Like that's kind of what it felt like to me, just with the shock on his face. Like maybe he's remembering all the different parts of his split experience. But, you know, I think watching this episode, I had a theory in a previous episode about there being maybe like more than one instance of like your severed being. Like I think we were talking about Cobell, and I was like, maybe there's like 3 versions of her or something. I feel like this episode confirmed that there are multiple versions, more than 2 within a severed being. But correct me if you think I'm wrong, because when we look at Gemma on this episode, there's the version of Gemma that ends up walking or going up the elevator. So that was the severed like innie that you would typically have. Then when she was downstairs, that seemed to be her outie, if I understood that correctly. But
yes,
every time she walked into a door, it was like this new instance of a different severed being or a severed individual.
Yes.
Like I don't think she had any memory of either her Annie or her Audie's experience in any of those doors.
So my interpretation of that was that those were various. So she's essentially the guinea pig for what they're developing out there, which I would assume the giant end goal here for Lumen Industries, well, not maybe all of them, but the commercial side of how they're going to make a ton of money on this thing is in the recap. It's essentially hinted at in the recap when Devin asks Cobell, she essentially insinuates, what if you want to have a baby, but you don't want to feel the pain of having the baby? And that is essentially what I think Gemma is testing out for Lumen, which is a world with no pain, where your Audi never experiences pain. You don't experience the pain of the dentist. You don't experience the pain of your hand cramping up or marital abuse. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's what that was insinuating. You don't experience the freaking trauma of a plane crash. You don't experience all these various horrible things, and that's why you see Drummond asking, is the severed barrier holding? In other words, is the barrier between the severed states that she's in? She's the true. Remember we said Mark was the most important person? It's actually Gemma is the most important person here.
Sure seems like it.
It's not Mark. Mark is essentially the final boss for her in some sense. Is she able to see Mark and not feel the pain of having lost him? Maybe. I don't know if that's what that is supposed to do, or maybe they're just testing the strength of the various severed states. I'm not sure what that is, but it seems to me that they want to roll this out as a way to essentially like, hey, Zach, you're severed, and now anytime you want, we're going to put like this gateway at the door, and when you go to the doctor's office, you get to get severed. You're going to go get a tattoo, you just got severed. Hey, you don't want to wait 14 hours on a plane? We're going to sever you. You're not going to have to remember, the plane ride.
I love everything you just said, and I think I completely agree with it. It kind of makes me wonder, like, what if what they're doing that on the MDR, what MDR is doing is essentially building those programs, right? Because we know, well, Mark is working on Cold Harbor, and Cold Harbor was the name on one of the doors. It's the one door she hasn't gone through yet because it's not finished, right?
Yeah.
So what if their job of like finding all of these scary numbers inside of these like small like projects is really them in some weird convoluted way like coding the system to remove the bad parts of that experience? And I'm wondering, like, does Cold Harbor have to do with death? And like, in the sense of like, you don't have to feel the pain of death of somebody that had died, right? Like maybe that's what that experience is going to be. But I think what you said makes like a ridiculous amount of sense. And I feel like it just pairs really well with the way that I see them sort of like removing these scary numbers, these scary things from like these projects, these cases, Cold Harbor, every other thing that they've ended up working on.
Yeah, I think you bring a great point. We actually had an emailer write in, Mr. Mike. He is known as the Silo Wool book reader, and we're glad you reached out. We won't talk about your Silo comments here until we get back to our Silo coverage for season 3. But he did make a comment here about, you brought something to mind there, which was Cold Harbor. Is it about removing the
sting of death? Yeah,
the sting of death, essentially. Well, he mentioned, and I don't think I have to read all of this, but do you remember the guy whistling, which we see him? He's the doctor in this episode. Dr. What does she call him? Dr. She says his name at the end, Dr. Maurer.
Yeah, it sounds right.
He says, all right, so this is from the last episode. Okay. He did make a great... Okay, he said a few things. I'm just going to read his whole thing and we'll talk about it. But first I'll start with, and what did the guy who we didn't see his face whistling... This was the key part. What is the song he's whistling? The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald have to do with anything. If either of you aren't familiar with the song, it's about a ship on Lake Michigan that got hit in an awful storm, and ended up sinking with all hands aboard lost by Gordon Lightfoot. Could this be what? Okay, so that's what I'm wondering. He did also mention, are we finally going to get what I've been wanting to see this season, which is a cameo by Ben Stiller himself. At first, when I saw the Doctor, I thought it was Ben Stiller in like, what do you call that? Prosthetic? Yeah. I thought he was in prosthetics, but then I was like, the prosthetics are so tight to this guy's face. It doesn't look like it. And then I looked it up, and it's this guy, Robbie Benson, which I'm not super familiar with him, but he did a great job of creeping me out. And I really thought it was Ben Stiller for like the first 20 minutes of the episode in Get Up. But Mike mentioned another thing that I kind of want to talk about, which is, we can maybe talk about this later, but he said, I wonder if any Mark and Audi Helena used protection when they had sex. And I wondered he said, what the hell kind of ramifications would a baby bring into this already effed up dynamic? So I wondered that, by the way, like just what happens with that child, like a severed and unsevered person, or I don't know. The dynamic is crazy in my head. I can't even work it out there, but yeah. We talked about removing the bad memories. I think I had floated an idea out there recently. Remember, Mark was depressed, right? So part of the reason he got severed was to forget that he's depressed all the time. But that seems to be just the general thing. I don't know what Cold Harbor is going to be, but it very clearly feels like the final boss of whatever.
It does.
You know, because the one benefit, though, is that Gemma is on a floor that her Audi exists in. So maybe it doesn't matter because Mark is reintegrated now. At least that's what it feels like. Mm-hmm. So perhaps, like, if Mark's able to get down there, he's going to recognize her regardless.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is that elevator seems to be not connected to the rest of the building. It seems to only connect to the severed floor.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me.
It does. And I mean, I think if Mark was still severed and he goes down that elevator, I think he would become unsevered again. Or I guess he would become his Audi, is what I really meant when he goes down there. So, like, yeah, I mean, no matter what, he would recognize Gemma at this point. I'm really looking forward to seeing that initial meeting. I hope we don't have to wait till like the very last episode of the season to see that.
I don't understand. I don't know what they're going to do. We have 3 episodes left, which feels like a lot with how much we've been told, right? Mm-hmm. Are they going to finally bring some sort of conclusion to this? Is Severance going to be a 3-season show? Is it going to be a 4-season show? The way they're treating this, the way they treat every episode, like with the love and intent they put in each one, it feels like they want to wrap this thing up like in the next season. Like that's what it feels like to me. But I could be wrong. Because I've also said in the past, the way they're setting us up with the way Lumen exists as an industry or as a company feels like we could get some other stories within this Severance universe. Like they have built a world within this universe. And I could totally see spin-offs from the Severance story.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. You know, I did also just want to mention, right, like you were talking a little bit ago about like the whole, as the episode progressed, like seeing all of those flashbacks, like it got darker. I actually did not pick up too much on the fact that it got darker. What I picked up on was Mark's demeanor. When the episode first started, I was like, wow, that's a really happy Mark. Like, I don't think I've ever heard a happy Mark. And then just, man, like the frustration and like disappointment as the episode progressed really started coming through. So it's incredible, like how well they kind of paired up the visuals with just the acting and the personality of that. This is, again, I mean, phenomenal freaking episode. There's not really anything I have to gripe about.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Though, you know, we see a lot of things in this episode. We see how Mark meets Gemma. We see that they're on campus together. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure where this location is, but they're both donating blood, and Mark makes his move, and in like a sly comedic fashion, we hear him reading this thesis called "All Quiet on the Western Blunt," which is a great title for a world like
it is
talking about drug use in World War I. That's fantastic. It also sounds like it would be a hilarious comedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a Seth Rogen Pineapple Express type war movie.
That would be perfect.
It'd be great. Yeah.
Man.
There's a lot to cover, man, because it kept on bouncing back and forth and back and forth. Just seamlessly. We did get Devin meeting Regabi, which was a little bit annoying because Regabi is so frustratingly mysterious about everything.
Yeah.
That I would probably have to, if I was Devin, I'm putting myself in Devin's shoes, I'd have to hit this woman. Yeah. Because I'm done for. If the podcast gets famous, someone will just splice that up and then like get me in trouble and cancel me. But if my sibling is half dead on the couch,
yeah,
and I got this damn stranger in there with a bunch of medical tools,
mm-hmm.
and they're being all
cagey
coy and mysterious, mysterious with me, I think I'm gonna grab them by the shoulders and make them tell me whatever I need to hear.
Yeah,
from that person. The fact I can't call an ambulance. Who the hell do you think you are? And then you leave, which by the way was interesting because Devin made the attempt, and we talked about this. Is Cobell going to come in as the wild card ally of Mark and Devin? And I do think we're heading there. But I think she's going to be conflicted, right? The same way Milchick is having an identity crisis. Mm-hmm. Which way is Cobell going to go and which way is Milchick going to go? Because I think they're going to be like yin and yang. I think they're going to be complete opposites. I think one will stay loyal to Lumen, and then the other one will essentially have a free will to do what they want to do. Yeah. And I think Milchick will end up being the good one. I think Cobell will end up being the one who reverts, if I had to guess.
Interesting.
But I know it doesn't look like it now because the way Milchick turns around Miss Casey. But and by the way, we have no idea. Actually, no, we do have an idea. I was going to say we have no idea in what timeline Miss Casey came up through the hallway. But we do, because Mark was stalled at 96% with the nosebleed. So we know it happened sometime within the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Probably last episode. Which is crazy to think all the other stuff going on the floor.
It is.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Going back to Regabi, though, do you think she's gone? Or where do you think she went?
I think she'll come back. I think she just stormed out more out of anger than anything else. Because I don't think Devin actually called Cobell.
No, I kept on thinking she did because of the screen.
Yeah, the screen looked like when you start a call and you have the end button. But I mean, there was no conversation that took place.
No, none.
So I'm sure Regabi is gonna come back like in the next episode. She's gotta at least check in on Mark, if not continue the treatment. I don't know what did this happen to just magically be successful after this episode, and he's just perfectly reintegrated, or like are they still going to have to continue the treatment so that he doesn't, I don't know, die from this?
I'm not sure. We didn't get quite a sense of where Mark is mentally.
Not at all.
But it did. I mean, it really breaks your heart to see him like that at the end of the episode. Though you could put yourself in his shoes. He has been dreaming, about this love, the love of his life, and just kind of feeling her throughout this whole sequence of this episode. Mm-hmm. And then he wakes up and Devin asks him the same question that the nurse asked Gemma at the start of the episode, which is, where did you go? And they were both in their memories thinking about the same thing at the same time, it seems. And you see this he kind of shudders at the thought of Gemma, and then it ends on the shot of her eyes, which I thought was just insanely good. Like, just fantastic acting.
Yeah. Incredible.
From Adam Scott.
I also feel like the end of the episode where Mark is kind of waking up, am I just making things up in my head, or is that the first scene that we've had that's not a flashback that actually felt warm, like that nice warm sun feels like it was kind of coming in through the window? It's every other clip I've seen, again aside from these flashbacks, has always been cold. So maybe that is I don't know, representing him really actually waking up and okay, he remembers the happiness now that he once had, and I guess maybe his two minds are kind of coming back together.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know
That's
if
a
there's
great
any
point.
significance with that, but I mean, it kind of feels like it makes sense. Everything is so intentional with what they do in this show.
Yeah, I was gonna say everything feels like it is intentional. So I think you could have spotted something there.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of the show, is that they don't spell everything out for you. Just like in the opening sequence, it ends with a shot of the back of Mark's head, and you see this person clawing through the innie, trying to claw itself out, right? And then the eye that's looking at you. You actually get that shot in this episode, and I'm trying to recall when it is, but I feel like it's when you see the long export hallway. They show it's like someone trying to go through hair, and you see that eye. But this time it's like Gemma trying to peek out, which is interesting.
That's so interesting.
I'll be honest, I have no idea how the hell they're going to be able to escape this facility if that elevator's not connected to anywhere else. But I imagine at some point here that doctor's going to come into play, because he has a love affair going on with Gemma, which hopefully there's no foul play going on in these rooms where he has, sexually taken advantage of her in any of these rooms. But
I was just going to bring up the whole doctor thing. Like, you're going to have to let her go. Like that whole comment. I'm going to be honest. My head kind of went to like a dark place for a moment in this episode where I'm like, man, what is actually happening behind these doors?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
but she didn't seem like she would go into these rooms, but she never liked the guy. Right?
Yeah.
She never, the dentist room, she hates his ass. When she's writing, she definitely can't stand his ass. And he says, Christmas has a funny way of coming around. And she goes, it's always Christmas. Like she don't play. And then outside of it, the first chance she gets, she slams a chair over his head. So I don't think, first and foremost, I think Drummond seems to be on top of it, because he's very pissed and annoyed with the doctor. He even says, why are you wearing this stupid sweater? And we know why he's wearing it, because he's infatuated with her from the Christmas thing, and then even does the scumbag move of lying about Mark being over her when he gets an opportunity to. I don't even know what he was trying to do in that moment, whether he was trying to woo her, but maybe he has a soft spot for her in a sense that she can manipulate and use to get out of there. I don't know what's going to happen of it, but there doesn't seem to be a single redeeming quality about that guy.
No, he feels like a real scumbag. I mean, there's just the move alone of like, oh, Mark, he remarried. You've been down here for a long time. Like, that's not cool. Like, that just felt completely manipulative. He wants her and has to, I guess, break down her belief that, well, I'll be faithful to Mark, my husband, even though I'm theoretically dead, which, I guess the question I haven't really thought about yet, though, is, like, how did we get here, though? Like, what are the circumstances for Gemma to essentially, like, kill herself? Because I guess here's what I'm thinking. Her being in this whole situation felt completely voluntary to me. The fact that she is down in this room going through this testing,
she doesn't seem to,
like her
she's not
outing.
acting like she's a prisoner.
Correct.
That's the odd thing. That's a great point, Zach. That because this is her outie in this floor.
Yeah.
And she never says anything like, you guys need to let me go. You've been holding me down here for God knows how long.
Yeah.
My husband doesn't even know I'm alive, blah, blah, blah. She's not acting like that.
Not at all.
So what the hell happened? Was she in on it? What work? The work is great and mysterious. Was the work that she was doing? Did she not speak Russian at one point in this episode? There was a scene.
I missed it.
She spoke. All right, so go to the scene right before that French montage that you were flicking around when Mark is reading on the couch. So they're in her office. He gives her the ant farm. Then it does a transition when they kiss, and you see the back of his head, and she leans over his shoulder. Go to that. See who says we need to watch this twice when you got a photographic memory severed version of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing the play-by-play here.
Let's see if
I'm like LeBron James when he just recalls a basketball play from 10 years ago. The floppy weak side right. All right, go to the info. Keep going. Right there. Right there. Oh, you passed it already.
All right.
Go back. Right there. Perfect. Hit play.
Let's see.
You got subtitles on?
I do now.
We're gonna need the subtitles. Okay, give it a second.
We're right around 15 minutes.
the music will start to play, and then I'm pretty sure she gets up from there and she says something in Russian. You might be able to skip forward here a couple.
You think it'd be right before this montage?
I thought it was.
I didn't catch anything Russian. I mean, there was.
Well, it said it was a parentheses that said in Russian.
Huh.
Go back 10 seconds more.
Very interesting. I mean, I know like they mentioned like the names of like a couple books throughout this that were seemed like foreign titles, but I didn't catch anything
Maybe
that she said in Russian.
Maybe it was after the montage, but this montage ends with the scene of Rick and Devin. Is it here? You could let it play. The audience, if you want to watch along, it's around 16 minutes.
Man, it's
Might have been
such a good.
Like this montage,
man. Dang.
This montage alone, like, would have been a joy to create. Like, it's just such a beautiful.
It's such a vibe. That film feel, the faded blacks, the grain. That's what I love. Like, I mean, yeah, I like crispy shots, like high resolution things, which is most of Severance as well. But I just love this gritty, organic feeling.
Can I take control here? Can you give me
I don't think
access?
I can. I don't think it lets me on here.
No? Let me see.
I can let you annotate. That's about it.
Yeah, no, I can't do it. I'm almost certain that there was a scene where it said brackets in Russian. And I was trying to have some theory that maybe whatever she was going out to do was not what she said she was going out to do.
You mean
that's my theory.
Like at the end of the episode when she
when
left
she's
and
leaving
was like,
and she
I
asks
want to play charades.
And she says, "Mark, do you want to come?" And I know he says no, but maybe she was going to do something that she said that was not actually what she was going to do.
Well, I mean, I think that's the case because I mean that's the night that she died. Yeah, like
and Ragabi says that they own the law enforcement around here. Kira does.
Mm-hmm.
So, or Lumen does. So, is it that far-fetched that they just lied to Mark and she never died?
Kind of feels like that, to be honest. Like, because again, like this whole thing felt voluntary from her perspective. Like, I don't think she was coerced into this. Whatever this is, this testing of this device that separates you from pain in the world, which, you know, like at surface level, it kind of sounds nice. Pain sucks, but I also feel like that would just, man, that would just suck as well. Like having no pain at all. Like I think there's positive things that can come from pain. Like there's things you learn. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to live in a world with absolutely no pain. It'd be boring.
Achilles, it's like it reminds me of that line Achilles says about life being more beautiful because you die. You know, it's if you experience pain, then you know what it's like to not have pain. You know, you need to be sad to know happiness and appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So to have this world where it's just, you know, all fun, no pain, you would eventually go numb to that too. Like it's not good either in some sense, right? Yeah. You need adversity. You need these things. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. I just imagine like this world, this severed world. I just feel like it would be horrible.
I kind of think so too. It just feels too dystopian.
What did you think of when Gemma asked the doctor, when I go, like she acknowledges that she's been in every single room besides Cold Harbor. Mm-hmm. And she says, what happens when I go in Cold Harbor? Am I done? And she says, will I be able to go and see Mark again? He says, you will see the world again and the world will see you. And then she says, well, I see Mark. And she goes, Mark will benefit from the world you're siring, which I think goes in line with the theory we have, which is that she's going to usher in a world that is free of pain. Yeah. But what does that mean? Like. Does she die? Does she have to sacrifice herself for this to come true?
See, that's the thing I don't know, right? And I think there's maybe a side of me that is like, yeah, maybe she has to like die for this to end or whatever. But if I think maybe a little more logically about what's going on, she's being tested because the device is in her, right? So if my theory of like, well, Cold Harbor is, to use your words, the final boss, it's to see if you can remove the sting from experiencing others' death.
So I was going to make a theory right now and say I'm going to bet all the money possible that the final episode of the season will be called Cold Harbor. And I looked it up right now, and surprisingly, Apple's already released the names of the final episodes, and episode 10 is titled Cold Harbor.
There you go.
So it seems like we will be getting a conclusion to whatever is going to happen here. And it's hard to imagine where the show goes from here if we do get some sort of conclusion with Gemma. I don't know where we'll go.
Yeah. So. I mean, it could... maybe we end up getting some switch up like I think we're having in Silo a little bit. But I guess like maybe in Severance, like we get to the end of season 2, and then what happens is the storyline pivots into like, okay, we brought the audience along. Now they know what's going on. They understand the very dark nature of this. And it turns into like, okay, take down Lumen, basically, like take him out, right? And maybe it just becomes like this battle, this war against Lumen Industries.
Could see that.
Like I think that could make sense. Because, I mean, once we know the mystery here, we have the answer to everything that's been so confusing this season and last season. What else would there be? I mean, we're not going to follow another character through like the same severed experience. Like that just doesn't seem to make sense. Plus we have Irv who was infiltrating Lumen. So like there's someone out there trying to look into this stuff and figure out what's happening. So maybe it becomes a political or business battle.
What did you think of those cards? We see the same cards that Bert was printing out, which look like self-defense cards. And then Gemma corrects Mark and says, no, it's not self-defense. They're not fighting each other. It's the same guy fighting himself. And he goes, how do you figure? He said, well, they have the same haircuts. But it's the same cards that Bert's printing out in that room. Why is Gemma getting those? Is she being straight up with Mark, or was she working with Lumen on this?
I mean, I think that's my point. Like, I think she was working with Lumen.
Before you continue, the cards are supposed to represent the killing of one's ego. So,
I thought the card was like didn't they say the card that was the Chikhai Bardo? Like it was representing the fighting of oneself. I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe at that point she was already working for Lumen. I mean, I feel like that's what that seems to indicate. Don't you?
That scene with the cards indicates that she was working for Lumen?
I think that she was working for Lumen at that point. Like, I don't know. I don't think she was always working for Lumen necessarily. But, I mean, you make a good point. I think those were very similar to the cards Bert was printing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe.
No, I think it was the exact same.
Then it would make sense. Like, I don't know what... Again, like, what else would be the significance of that other than the fact that it's like, well, a Lumen employee, Bert, was printing those cards, and now Gemma, a Lumen employee, had those cards. Also, like, it would make sense all around. I think that would just make sense. I mean, Mark was not severed. He was not working for Lumen, to my understanding, up until the point where his wife died. and he wanted to go into this experience. So if I were betting, I would definitely say like Gemma voluntarily entered this whole situation of like having to fake her death and go through all of this testing because she felt tortured from her bad experience with her miscarriage, and I would imagine the marital issues she and Mark were having.
Yeah, I think that's a solid. I think it's a solid bet at least.
Yeah.
So we end the episode, the saddest flashback ever. Gemma never gets back home. Mark's alerted that I'm just gonna put question mark that she died on the road. Gemma escapes briefly after smashing the doctor over the head with a chair and gets up to the severed floor, but unfortunately for her is greeted by Milchick, who sends her right back down. And obviously he got the phone call because he was super out of breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was booking it to that door, that's for sure.
Which was a nice touch, to kind of like just how well orchestrated everything is and just in sync on this show.
Absolutely.
And what was I going to say? And that's how we end. We end with Mark waking up, seemingly reintegrated, and the shot of his wife's eyes. Yeah. That is what we end with. So is Mark reintegrated? Is it his Audi thinking about these things? Are we going to have to keep doing these treatments with Regabi, or are we on to phase whatever this is at this point to get Gemma out of there? Because it does feel like a race against the clock that if he finishes Cold Harbor. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to put this out there because we're done covering this episode.
Yeah.
If Mark's reintegrated now, then it doesn't matter if when he goes back to work, he will be himself no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be a perfectly reintegrated version of both his innie and outie at the same time, which means he'll have feelings for Helly and for Gemma. But when he goes to work, he'll know that when he finishes this, he's more than likely going to encounter his wife in some regard, or it has something to do with his wife,
mm-hmm.
right? In doing this, he probably will have a plan in place to break her out, or at least some semblance of a plan to get her out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So that when he's done with the work, he literally will be ready to recognize her. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that's going to be, but it's going to be the greatest escape episode of anything ever if it pans out the way I would love it to.
Yeah.
Some Oceans. I've been dying to watch Ocean's 11. It's like one of my favorite movies ever. Again, I just want to see something like that, like just this heist of Gemma and get her out of there. Will the goat people help? Who's gonna come aboard to help? Well, we got to learn more about Bert. We need to learn more about what is Irv up to, what is he working on, and how is it gonna combine with Mark's motive of getting Gemma the hell out of there. And how does Dylan come into play? He's like the most random person of the four at this point, and we don't know what his motivations are. We don't know why he's there, what if he serves a purpose. But yeah.
Well, hopefully we do get a happy ending at the end of this season. I think we kind of need it at this point.
I had this wild theory that everybody in MDR was there as a pawn to just help Mark get to the finish line, so that even Irv and them, but I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think that's true. I just think this building the final boss it's just hard. It takes time. Everybody else was building their own little villains or whatever you call that in the gaming world. We had this theory, I think, I don't know how serious we were taking it, but early on saying that Miss Huang was maybe
Gemma's
and Mark's child. I think that's confirmed at this point that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, for sure.
given the miscarriages, so we can rule that one out altogether.
Yeah,
cool.
Shall we get into categories?
Let's do it. Let's start with favorite line of the episode.
I'm going to go with Gemma when she says, "Can you please speak like a normal person?" to the doctor.
That's good. I'm going to go with Drummond with the whole, "Why are you wearing that stupid sweater?"
Yeah,
that's great. How about favorite character in this?
Probably have to go Gemma.
Yeah,
on this one.
I am. It's Gemma all the way for me on this one. This is solid. Most screen time we've ever had of her.
For sure. It's either Gemma or Mark, of course, which is the obvious choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Now for the top one. Favorite scene of the episode. That's so tough to pick for me. I mean, I love the montage just from like an aesthetic point of view.
The montage is one of them for sure. The only one that I rewound though in the whole episode was the cable shot going up to the guy tapping his foot, and then we see another mystery within mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 lookalikes seemingly surveilling the work and acting as some sort of severance barrier for these people.
Yeah, that one was pretty good as well. Yeah, that was a good one. I forgot about the fact that transitioned into those 4 guys.
No answer for the goats still. We've gone down to this floor
nothing.
and there's still nothing.
How would that play into everything that we've seen right now? I don't understand how. There's literally got to be no connection to it. I just think it's just for comedic relief at this point.
I have no idea. It'd be hilarious if they play zero role, but they have to. Everything is so intentional in this show. It'll have a reason. It did make me, when I saw the plane though, plane crash simulation, it made me wonder what other hellish situations they're putting her through.
Yeah.
Like, are they putting her in a little Titanic sub to go down to 50 leagues under the sea? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of scenarios are they putting her in?
Yeah.
To stress test this severed mind.
Man, that would be one mind you probably would not want to reintegrate everything.
Oh, hell no.
Like, the absolute torture that she must be going through in all of those rooms all the time. And I think she's being subject to a hell of a lot more than you would in a normal lifetime.
100%.
Yeah.
When she says how many rooms today, she sounds like a tortured child.
Yeah.
You know, like that she's just these are like her parents, and they're like freaking. She has no power over what she's doing. She says, how many rooms am I doing today? She's in a prison. Her bed looks like a freaking prison cell bed. You know. You brought up a good point about you wouldn't want to reintegrate with that mind. Oh man, I was thinking of something there. Yeah, I mean, who knows the amount of hellish scenarios. I would assume though that the scenarios have to do with things that people would normally encounter, because you have to be able to switch into the severed state, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be things like normal people deal with, like getting on a plane, or going to the dentist.
Door to go to the dentist,
going to the dentist, I don't know how the handwriting one, the writing the letter, I don't know how that one comes into play. That one felt just like a sick fantasy of the Doctor.
It kind of did, Yeah.
That one just felt like he wanted a fake wife, and that was the one he created.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not much darker than that. But who knows?
I hope not.
Severance hasn't really shown, but it's crazy how this show can go from drama to comedy to horror film when she's escaping and running through the hall, and then the horror music's hitting, and you got that freaking scary ass nurse kind of like walking down the hall. Like, that was pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, I now remember what I was gonna say. What's the name of the Nazi doctor who did all those sick experiments?
You mean like in real life?
Real life, yeah. He's famous, infamous.
Not Joseph Mengele?
Yeah, him.
Okay.
That's what this doctor reminds me of, pretty much. Like this evil ass doctor running like foul experiments. And what kind of qualifications does he have to be doing this? Because he's doing, he's Mr. Method Actor over here, playing 70 different roles, right?
Yeah.
Doing 70 different experiments. I mean, this is like some effed up stuff, man.
It is.
It's crazy.
That's an interesting. I mean, a lot of what they are doing does kind of feel inhumane. So,
just a little bit.
Yeah, right. Just a little bit. Yeah, sure. I want you to do it to me, but I also don't really know what you're doing to me. This feels like somebody's sick fantasy.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
All right. Well, I think that about does it. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Severance. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Story Archives. And also, if you're enjoying all of our podcast coverage, make sure to tune in to a special episode I did for Court of Gold, the Netflix series, the documentary series about the Olympic basketball journey, specifically of Team USA, but it also covered Serbia, Canada, a little bit of, actually France, a lot of, and a little bit of Germany. So check that out if you like sports, if you love basketball like I do. And we also got an interview dropping with a good buddy of mine, Isaac, who's an actor on the Dexter prequel series going on right now. So that's going to be dropping, I think, next week. We're going to play it by ear a little bit. And that's what we got for now. 3 more episodes of Severance, guys. So make sure to email us at contact@soapbox.house, comment on the YouTube channel, share with a friend, help us reach 1,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, help us. You'll be a part of the first 1,000. Then when we get to 1 million, you'll be like, man, I remember when those guys were at 826 subs, asking us, begging us to subscribe to their channel. And now look at us. So, yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you. I think that was a good enough outro, so I'm just going to leave it here. But we will catch you in the next one. I hope you have a good week.
Have a great weekend. Peace.
Peace.